Welcome back, everybody, to the Duelyst World Championship November qualifier. And speaking of which, in our first semifinal series between Sibon and Rmoriar1, we do have those hashtags for you to share in Twitch chat, hashtag RMOWin or hashtag SIBWin, depending on who you think is going to win it all. And Skarzig, we have here Rmoriar1, who was the previous DPL champion. And then Sibon, who consistently makes it to the finals, but then falls a little bit short there. So do you think that there's extra tension here for Sibon in the sense that he's went all the way so many times and is just looking to close it out?
Yeah, I had predicted that Sibon is just going to be so hungry at this point that he's just going to steamroll out of the bracket. And Rmoriar1 has proven to be a very powerful player, but I think that Sibon's just had enough of those shenanigans and is ready to take his place at the top.
And I'm sure he would be very excited to take that place in the top. But Rmoriar1 has seen a lot of experience in the top himself with that previous championship. So I'm sure he's looking to add some ribbons and be able to call himself a grandmaster here. Taking another look at the decks that they're bringing, Sibon will have Argion, Cassiva, and Vath. Faye has been banned away. Rmoriar1 will have Argion, Cassiva, and Faye, with Lilith banned away. Now, Winter, do you think people have kind of caught on to Rmoriar1's interesting Lilith deck that he's brought? Because we've seen kind of those toss-up bans before, but now they're becoming a bit more specific.
Yeah, it's a pretty greedy list. It runs like nether summonings and things like that. And you know, if you can get a swingy playoff with like a Ritual Banishing and like a Nether Summoning or a Spectral Remnant and Nether Summoning, it's super hard to come back. The pieces don't always fit together, but I just feel like it's such a wild card deck that you just rather not play against it and play the matchups that you're prepared for. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what we're seeing coming out of the bands there.
And to show how high the tensions are, things are fairly even with chat. We have 58% for Rmoriar1 and then 42%. Well, it just even shifted more. It's going back and forth a little bit, but almost 50-50 between the two players. So it shows that there's really a hard time when it comes to predicting here. Now, Skarzig, with these lineups, do you think that if we see the mirror matches, which is a possibility since 2 of the 3 generals are the same, that it's really going to come down to who has the strongest variant of that general, or is it going to be a little bit RNG?
I think that Argion's different variants come down to that aspect, right? Because a slower variant of Argion is usually Argion has a lot of tools. Even slower variants run the same early game stuff with Windblade Adept and Azurite Lion. So the slower Argion decks can really hold their own against that early pressure and then just outvalue them in the long run. When it comes to other factions, it's a lot more of a toss-up. But generally, Argion, again, fast versus slow, is favored for the greediest deck.
Mm. And with this, too, we have Sibon, who's been obviously bringing Vath since the beginning of time, but he hasn't had as much of a shutout as he has in the past. It's pretty much a guaranteed win. He's kind of had people see into his bag of tricks in a way. Do you think that this is becoming a downfall for him, Winter, or is he still finding strength with the general with which he has so much experience?
Yeah, I think that he's going to do just fine. And he's obviously, branched out into playing other generals. His sort of like, it's almost like a meme at this point, the second place thing. I'm not sure that so much has to do with the commitment to bot. Mm-hmm. I like the spin that Skarzig put on it. He's going to be, his hunger is only going to increase as time goes on. So, is today the day? Or are the Cubs going to win?
It can happen. We've seen it. So with all of that, Skarzig, it is your turn to make the prediction first. Between Rmoriar1 and Sibon, who do you think will take it?
This is a tough call because I really do like both players a lot. Rmoriar1 has really won me over. His brash, risky play that he showed off yesterday. He takes it fast, takes it slow, whatever the matchup calls for. But Sibon, I got to throw it to him. I think that the overwhelming salt and hunger can just carry you through like an anime, right? It's just going to power him up. So I'm gonna give it 3-2 to Sibon. Rmoriar is gonna put up a fight.
This is the classic matchup too, because Rmoriar, upset Sibon. This is a monumental matchup.
Decisions.
This is really hard, and I have that 3-0 streak. I'm gonna say Sibon's 3-2. I already regret. Okay.
You don't have to.
You know what? Nope. I'm gonna stick with it. Let's see what happens. I'm biting my nails here.
Alrighty, so both are on.
Secretly right, because if Morari ends up winning, then we'll both be wrong, and then you're kind of right because I'm wrong, right?
Yeah, at least I'm either right 4 times in a row, or you're wrong.
Well, we'll just have to see how it plays out here. But we do have game number 1 of our summer series. Rmoriar starting side with the Febe, and Sibon on side number 2 with Cassava. Don't forget to share your predictions with us using hashtag RMOWin or hashtag SIBWin in the Twitch chat, because we are sharing those results with you throughout the broadcast. We also have that giveaway live that you can enter, putting hashtag giveaway into chat and following that link. Max out your entries because it is free stuff, and who doesn't like that? But if everybody in the chat is ready, all the casters are ready, I know all are excited to find out who moves on from this semifinal round between these two extremely skilled players. So let's go ahead and hop into the action.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for this matchup. As Winter said, it's monumental right now. And how do you feel about Cassava? Yeah, exactly. Both players have a lot on the line here. Sibon's going to be very, very hungry for this win. Hopefully, that won't make him too risky, right? There's a chance that he could overplay. He could go in for lethal at some point, trying to close out the set and be punished for it.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's certainly there's certainly a psychological factor here when you're playing on the big stage against somebody who has beat you in the past, because you want to show everybody watching, and you want to show yourself that you're the best, because you're the best in your heart. And yeah, that can, depending on your mentality as a competitor, that can really affect your play. Going forward here, Rmoriar is going to need to pressure Sibon tremendously, I think, and snowball an early lead, because Sibon just runs so much healing. He's packed for the late game with the Revenants and the Obliterate. How do you feel about the matchup in general, Scarzy?
This matchup we've seen a little bit early in the tournament. We saw mid-rangey style of Fae relying on Jack's True Sight to close out the games. But if this is, what might be considered a little bit passé right now, control Fae, because we do see the Bone Reaper, but if this deck is designed to go into the ultra late game, he could hang. One thing that humans, the person who originally pioneered this style of deck, was saying is that it was built to counter Riva when she was very popular, but it has a very poor matchup against Cassava.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Fae just isn't, with pools like Bone Reaper just aren't equipped for the kind of late game that Cassava can bring. And so that's why I was saying earlier that Rmoriar is going to have to really, really pressure, hard and early in order to sort of get an advantage that he can then snowball in such a way as to prevent Sibon from really having the breathing room to set up those late game pieces. And it's not looking good for Rmoriar here. You have the double oozes, you have the Juggernaut coming down. Fortunately, Rmoriar does have the Aspect of the Fox for it.
Using Aspect of the Fox on an ooze feels really bad. In this matchup, you want maybe an Abyss or something along those lines in order to keep up that early pressure, as you were saying. That might be worth it.
Well, I mean, I think he's probably holding it. Well, I hope he holds it because he's going to need it for the Juggernaut. But, we'll see.
Yeah, because these oozes, double ooze is going to generate a lot of creep.
And it's a lot of damage.
Exactly. When you get your early creep generation in such a good spot, right? If you get like early Abyssal Crawlers, early ooze, etc., then the Juggernaut played on curve is so huge. When it drops at 4 mana, it ends up being a 6/6 or a 7/7. Your opponent has to use hard removal on it, and that's what makes Kasava's late game so devastating.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, Juggernaut, it's best to play the Juggernaut after you develop like 2 oozes, right? But it's worse. It's worse against Faye than it is against anybody else, just because, or Vanar in general, just because of the ease with which they can dispel or remove it. Warbird gonna get some value here with the Hearth Sister. Looking to knock this Spectral Blade out as soon as possible.
So that's a really good value play. Again, as you just mentioned, a really clean way to deal with ooze. We do get the numbers in from the chat, and they think that Rmoriar1 is going to pull this one through. They do
What margin?
By like 10%, I think.
Okay. All right. Yep, 56-44.
Mercy.
He's a crowd favorite.
Yeah, I think that it's because Rmoriar1 gets in there, right? We've seen games from him where he'll pull the win out and be left with like 2 or 3 HP, just barely on the edge of madness, like taking these plays that would seem so risky, but having it pay off for him in the long run.
And he's very good at calculating risk. And he's also just fun to watch because of his unorthodox strategies. And I mean, Sibon's sort of going in on this Juggernaut here. Dancing Blades in the mid game, not the worst minion to have 2 of in the hand, but you know,
it's best when it can respond to something.
And as Sibon's, you're concerned because if this Juggernaut gets answered in a tempo positive way, which is pretty easy for Vanar to do.
Exactly. We're seeing it shape up here where Sibon has actually run out of resources because the oozes were dealt with when they're trading into Snow Chasers, Hearth Sisters, those kinds of things that are going to die to whatever, right? You just want them to trade to keep the tempo positive. And now, Rmoriar1 coming through with the Kian, burns a Frostiva. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, not a card that's, main decked, but
would have been a really interesting pull to see in the game here for sure.
This Snow Chaser just dies to the BVS or General Punch for free.
Yeah, Rmoriar1 choosing to deny that mana instead, further choking out his opponent's resource.
That's not the replace that Sibon wanted to see. He wanted a Rite of the Undervault, ideally. Revenant wouldn't be awful, wouldn't be the best. When your opponent's at 21 health and you're kind of down on board, Revenant doesn't actually have a tremendously huge impact. Rite of the Undervault would have been optimal to refill the hand. Now he's really got to think about what kind of game he wants to play here. Because if he keeps fighting for middle, he risks getting surrounded. He risks his life total getting chipped away. If he runs, he risks his opponent snowballing this crazy huge board. I think he's going to fight it out with the Dancing Blades and the pink. What do you think?
This is really interesting. Again, Sibon is getting out of infiltrate range. The Snow Chaser can trade into something, right? It can trade into the Dancing Blades and soften that up for maybe a Cryogenesis a bit further down the road. After the card was increased from 3 to 4 mana, we haven't been seeing it as much, so there's a chance it's not even run in Rmoriar1's list. So this is a really great way, again, to deal with the Snow Chaser. He didn't have to use his Bloodborne spell on it. He's saying, well, the only good targets for it to trade into won't put it in infiltrate range. And if he really values the Snow Chaser, then it just softens up the Dancing Blades and it gets to trade into something else and get more value. Sibon only needs to buy time until Rite of the Undervault shows up.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, as Moriar, you don't know what's in your opponent's hand. You're concerned about overextending in case of a Revenant play. You do have to be concerned about this Dancing Blades. Your opponent's going firmly into infiltrate, rather out of infiltrate. Do you play the Bone Reaper to maximize value?
The Bone Reaper would be an interesting play here to take out the Wolf, soften up that Dancing Blades a little bit. The problem is because it has such low attack, it becomes fodder for the Spectral Revenant in a way.
And it's just not provoking the general. Now you've provided Sibons with the breathing room he needs.
Yeah, he can walk to the left and maybe play Kaleno or something.
Wow. And he's so low on cards that breathing room is exactly what he needs to get back into this game. Juggernaut, not the worst here.
Mm-hmm. He could honestly
It's an
maybe
8-8.
just play one as a distraction, have it run interference, and then...
Ooh. I know. Okay, hands are clearly incorrect.
Okay, so that might have just been... He might have played it as soon as he drew it, right? And then the transition from it coming out of his hand, didn't show up on our screen. But that's all right. The Kaleno, again, was another option I was just talking about, where creating that distance now... Kasava can just put this thing down in the corner. It might eat a removal, and then that makes the Juggernauts that much more threatening.
Right. And, this is really stressful for Moriar because he is low. He's getting into the red zone for Revenant. He needs to get a plan together like this turn to win the game.
And, looking at the list right now in his hand, Lukian is not that great of a thing to rely on. Leaves him with 3 mana to use whatever she pulls. That's more of a, I need to refill my hand, or I'm desperately fishing. It's like it will pull something, but there's a high chance he won't be able to use it. So the Jacks I really agree with in this situation, because it throws a threat onto the board that if Sibons doesn't have lethal here, in the next turn or two, needs to deal with the Jack's True Sight because of the threat of Razorback.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of play that's going to allow him to come back here. Kalino, Bloodborne Spell, going to mop up a few here. Maybe even a Demonic Lure.
Yeah, exactly.
Sibon
exactly can deal with the Jack's True Sight here, generally very well. Even Demonic Lure could take one out, but that buys Morari another turn or two, right, where he's cleaning up the Jacks instead of going for lethal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what Rmoriar wants, for this Jack's True Sight to just run interference. I
mean, as long as he has a way to actually capitalize on it, though, right? Because all Sibon needs is a Spectral Revenant or something, and Moriarty's
exactly
dead anyway.
Because he's not buying time for anything specific. He's just buying time in order to extend the game and hope that he gets something a bit better.
I mean, Aspect of the Fox and Chromatic Cold will handle the Juggernaut as well as the Kalino. That Kalino needs to go this turn. Looking at his hand, he's got, you can make some interesting plays with the Hearth Sister, maybe functions as pseudo removal in the same way that Juxtaposition does. Elkian, your hand is kind of full, but maybe you want to see some more cards here.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Razorback or something.
Yeah, exactly. A Razorback would really sweep forward. It will allow the Jaxes to hopefully bring him back into the game. I wanted to point out the Azure Herald here. It keeps the Bone Reaper from walking down to the Kaleno and attacking it, and then its passive ability to deal 2 damage from finishing it off. So he's just going to sacrifice the Azure Herald to it instead to body block for the Kaleno a bit more.
Indeed. I don't know. This is really one of those points in the game where I hate to say it, but it is going to come down to the draws for Sibon because he doesn't have any way of winning in hand. Moriar. Oh, someone's dog. And,
Sorry about that.
It's fine. I love dogs. So, yeah, I mean, I just...
Right now, Rmoriar is really in a pickle, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, because he got himself to the late game, but he's not...
Exactly. He doesn't have enough pressure. Again,
oh my God, and there's Obliterate.
I had mentioned this earlier, where Control Fae was this sort of list was designed to counter Riva, right? Because Fanar has a lot of answers for what Riva was trying to do back in the day. But now, once games go super long like this, imagine, if Sibon was playing Lionar, if Sibon was even playing Magmar, right? Their late game threats are so much more potent than anything Fanar could actually put out. At this point in the game, you end up relying on things like Pandora, right, to just carry you through. Maybe that's what he's fishing for.
I mean, Grandmaster Embla is a pretty good card in the late game, too, when that comes out.
Yeah, so that's definitely going to be the thing that Rmoriar is going to be trying out, I think, in a list like this.
Mm-hmm. So he doesn't know it. Well, okay, so Rmoriar he knows Sibon's deck. He's played against him. They almost have a rivalry at this point. He knows that of those 3 cards, one of them may be Obliterate. He's probably expecting it every turn with his fingers crossed. Going forward, does he need to rip something crazy off of this Alkean?
I'm trying to think what would he get at this point. Might be Avalanche. Just to get that damage in, but it doesn't help him in any significant way because Sibon is at a pretty comfortable life total considering.
Ooh, Frostfire and Altered Beast. I mean, he could Frostfire.
That's 3 damage,
Yeah, or he could White Asp. Ooh, White Asp, the Spelljammer. You get the Blazing Spine.
Yeah, so he does get the 3/3 Blazing Spine. The Bone Reaper does have him pinned down on that Blazing Spine. In this particular list, running the actual spell, right, to summon those, was one of the main combos of the deck to keep Bone Reaper provoked.
He's just dead to Obliterate, though.
Mm-hmm. Really unfortunate. Had he not gotten that early creep generation and had he not drawn the Obliterate, we would have actually seen the board starting to swing here because he was pretty...
Sibon would have been dead next turn. Sibon would have been dead next turn. So that was very close.
Now, Winter, you had noted earlier on in the match that Moriarty has a lot of unorthodox strategies that are enjoyable to watch. Can you expand upon that a bit?
Yeah. Oh, he just sort of, the first time I saw him, he was playing a match and the opponent had, I forget the generals, but the opponent had developed this really intimidating board in the middle. And in hand, it didn't look like there was a clear way for him to win. So he just ran away. He just ran away and just started playing minions in the back. And we've seen him make these sorts of divergences from commonly accepted wisdom, not taking mana tiles, not playing for the middle of the board, and then seeing it pay off in the macro perspective. And so, yeah, it's just really fun to see the sorts of approaches that he brings with his unique decks.
He almost had it. He could have had it in just a moment, but it wasn't enough to prevent the Obliterate from coming in with that beautiful animation there that we love looking at. It's so pretty. But one thing too, Sibon, all the way since 5 mana, had not a lot of cards in hands for a while, 2 Dancing Blades there, but Cass also typically tends to play on curve with these bigger bodies where it's not as much of a detriment, it seems. So Skarzik, do you think that's true? Or even though there was some clear card advantage to Moriarty, Sibon was able to hold in because of the general nature of cast decks?
Yeah, again, Kazova is pretty favored in that matchup. There, we saw the board swinging right towards the end. I feel like that's because Sibon just ran out of resources in the early game, didn't draw the right of the Undervault that we're really hoping for him to pull. But again, Obliterate is that late game win condition that you build the deck around. So you can say what you want about, oh man, that was such a good top deck. But I mean, the Ooze did work and everything in the Abyssal Scar exactly plays a huge role in developing those creep tiles, and then it just keeps growing more and more, and that's just the deck doing what it was designed to do.
Yeah, Obliterate is literally 8 mana, deals 0 damage, unless you have cards, generating creep before you play it.
Exactly. You have to build up to it.
And not to mention the fact that with so many of those creep tiles within the center columns there, it does inhibit the movement a bit of your opponent as well, because they're not wanting to constantly be stepping up on those. But there was also a bit of a stall in the middle. Winter, was this because of the development of things like Kaleno and Bone Reaper, these cards that have been lengthening these games?
Yeah, and also, Moriarty's hand generally very heavy on removal and low on capitalization. So he sort of didn't have a choice but to stall the game out in the way that he did. And of course, Sibon was just sort of trying to manage the board and get to his late game plays like Right of the Undervault, which we didn't see, Obliterate, which we did see.
Well, in game number 2, with Sibon up 1-win, he is bringing the Vath to the table, sticking true to his Lizard King prowess. So we'll see that going down in game number 2. Sibon on the starting side with Vath, and then Rmoriar1 bringing out the Argion. Make sure that you are sharing your predictions in the chat with hashtag RMOWin or hashtag SIBWin, as we will be sharing those prediction statistics with you throughout the broadcast. But let's go ahead and find out what happens in game number 2 of this semifinal series.
So this is really monumental, right? Because, well, I think we said at the beginning of the other one, but what I mean to say is that for Magmar to pull a win off of Argion will be enormous for Sibon to keep his momentum going. Magmar typically, has really good tech options, as I mentioned before, for matchups that you expect, but isn't as, 50-50 favored the way Argion is. We know that Sibon doesn't like to run the Smork deck, right? He's going to be running something more value-based, something more mid-rangey, and I think that is actually a lot better versus Linar.
Yeah, you're not going to fall off, and sort of come short, leaving your opponent and yourself at sort of 6 health, then they stick a minion and you lose. Something that kind of tends to happen to Smork decks. Interesting that you mentioned the value game here, because he does have, we see Tiger and Greater Fortitude. You can certainly play the value game with the buffs. You risk, if you can't get enough value out of the creatures before they're dispelled, of course you risk 2-for-1ing yourself, etc. But it's going to be interesting. I'm certain that Sibon's is going to apply them in a precise way.
Absolutely, because the Saber Spine Tiger, right? You throw the Greater Fortitude on it, it allows it to survive. You get to kill something, and then there's a body left over to deal with. That additional 5 damage, they have to figure out, what do I want to trade into this? And it's almost like a Dancing Blades.
And just like you're talking about here, what a gorgeous play. Develop the Spelljammer with the promise of refilling your hand. And since you have that draw coming, throw a 2/2 onto the Young Scimitar. You have threats spread out. You have this 4/5 with Rebirth. And you have this draw engine. And look at the hand here, too.
So clunky to deal with here.
How do you feel about the picks like Shadow Watcher and Circle of Life?
Yeah,
and even Martyrdom.
The Night Watcher and the Circle of Life are huge blowout cards for the Abyssian matchup, which is a list that can sort of take out Linar in the late game. And I think that with the presence of those 2 cards, it would make Kasava a very, very fatal mistake to play into this list, and we'll have to keep an eye on that. But generally speaking, versus Magmar, right, that's the other faction that really suffers because of Night Watcher. The Mecantor War Beast won't be able to drop down for a clutch play. It's going to cause Sibons to jump through a couple of extra hoops before he can get that clear.
Yeah, I mean, very, very heavy control list. I like it.
Exactly. It takes away so many out-of-hand options for your opponent. And when your opponent can't burst you out of hand, then they're forced to approach.
Right.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? Where Argion forcing you to approach is huge.
And obviously, I mean, it's not super hard to get Magmar to approach, right? That's their prerogative, is to approach, is to bring that Bloodborne spell attack on the General to bear. And here, cleanly, naturally selecting that Shadow Watcher, survival of the fittest at work here.
Oh, such a good answer to that thing.
Hilarious, Zir. So, I mean, this is control Linar.deck. I think that, wow, double Zir. This is such a greedy list. This is like really, really greedy. He might have to. I mean, he's going to have to play a removal spell on this 2-drop.
Yeah, it's still living, and that's the whole thing with the Rebirth, is you force him to have that extra resource in order to deal with it. And so this thing being so threatening on an empty board, like this just takes up Rmoriar1's turn and puts Sibon back on the initiative. And playing a Sunsteel, yeah,
absolutely. And let's talk about his decision positionally here. Instead of running forward to punch Sibon, he runs down. That already tells you what his game plan is. He's looking to get these lightning cards online, like Solarius and Zir. Now, what's going to be interesting is the extent to which Sibon just pressures him positionally such that he actually can't play them in a safe spot. Right.
Yeah, the Solarius, I think, you don't care if it gets cleaned up because it does its job. When you drop it, you draw 3 cards. It's a little baby right of the Undervault. The 3/3 just forces your opponent to take a turn off of killing you to finish off the Solarius, so you don't get immense value. The Martyrdom would probably be a nice play here, right? To just take it even slower.
I don't know that it's a nice play in the sense that you're 1-for-1ing an opponent and floating 3 mana at such an important stage of the game. However, given the context of his hand, he can just keep playing things like Grandmaster Zero over and over, and it's like he is at 20 health, so it's not like he needs to do something right now or die. You know what I mean?
it would have been nice to see like a Silver Guard Knight to follow that play, but it's not, again, as you said, not as severe. He's not like in threat of lethal right now.
Right. So if he does play the Grandmaster Zero and his opponent answers it like immediately, it's not like instant death. So, I mean, he's got to be careful though, because we're getting to the point where, if given a turn with 8 or 9 mana, the Magmar deck can burst you tremendously with a Thumping Wave play.
Yeah, the Thumping Wave Mechanter combo has been very much talked about. Very successful combo, especially since these games are almost guaranteed to get to 9 mana, right? Everybody is playing slower decks that have these crazy late game win conditions. And again, Voth has that ability, that late game threat of burst that some other factions might lack. And maybe another Night Watcher will show up here to maybe put a damp on that.
Yeah, I think you have to just, if you're going to Martyr, you're either playing Martyrdom or Sunwisp, or you're playing the Iron Cliff where this Sunsteel can't hit it.
And if he wanted to develop the Iron Cliff, in a really safe spot, then that would just give away that he has the Magnetize, right? And that would just force Sibon to play around it. I like that he played the Sunwisp there because there was a chance he could draw into Holy Immolation. Doesn't want to replace the Zir. Check this out. Rmoriar1 holding on to those instead of just trying to fish for a Holy Immolation instead.
And playing, at this point in the game, the Azurite. Yeah, and like you said, Rmoriar1 with the poker history, playing for the odds. Trying to optimize his chances of getting what he wants. This War Beast is a great response here. You do lose that Thumping Wave potential, but you have the Tiger in the hand, so it's not the end of the world. Celerity Cat.
Exactly. That's a huge threat. That has so much potential value bottled up into it. And now we can see, check this out, the Grandmaster Zir possibly dropping down, but Sibon has the Ephemeral Shroud.
Yep. He's got to be really careful. I mean, he has to heal himself this turn.
So he's going to clean that up.
He's going to lose the game.
Yeah, so he is going to go for the Sundrop Elixir here, recognizing the threat of having this Zir possibly cleaned up by something. It could even be an Egg Morph or Thumping Wave. So let me see. Tiger Thumping Wave is got 8 damage, and then he just slaps him. So that's going to be lethal there. Whew! Yeah, so that out of hand burst of damage is something that Lionar does not like to see. They want to try to force you to deal with the Zirs instead. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. If you have a way to deal with the Zir after you get them low and then finish them off in the same turn, so good to have that 2 mana answer to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I mean, considering that particular matchup then between Sibon and Rmoriar1, the fact that both of these generals are wanting to play up close and personal, how does that affect Winter? How did that affect that matchup?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The fact that both of these generals are wanting to play close and get those big bodies in front of their opponents.
Yeah, I mean, Sibon had I think Sibon's deck is better equipped to play that game because of tools like Greater Fortitude, which can let you snowball off this early board. Outside of Holy Immolation and sometimes Sunbloom, a lot of Lionar removal is 1-for-1, tempo negative, And we saw a lot of that, like Circle of Life. Night Watcher, not the best at fighting for board. It does eliminate the potential of like a War Beast play, but it came online so long before then that it wasn't really doing what it should have.
Mm-hmm. And now, because of the way things worked out in game number 2, we're actually going to see a mirror matchup between these two, with the Rogue Legacy skin coming to the rescue to show us the difference between the two players here. We've seen the mirror match. It was bound to happen at some point, being that every player was bringing RG on today. But do you think, Skarzig, that we're going to see this game kind of be a victim of the fact that more people are running Grandmaster Zir, and just this kind of who can live the longest, as opposed to maybe the chunk down Argion that we've seen in the past?
I'm thinking about this, and Sibon's Magmar list kind of speaks a lot. I think will inform us a lot of what list, because Magmar has extremely greedy options as well, where you run Earth Spheres and then rely on Pandora / Silithar Elder, right? A very greedy list. And I don't think that Sibon's likes to play those super greedy lists. He loves the mid-range value game. And from what we saw from Rmoriar's deck, 2-3 copies of Grandmaster Zir, there's a chance that, I think I had touched on this a bit earlier, a greedier Lionar list is going to win against a faster Lionar list pretty much every time, unless the faster list draws perfectly.
Yeah, and we're seeing that more people are moving away from that faster Argion. A lot more of a preference for this delayed greedy Argion, at least in the past series that we've seen. But before we hop into game number 3, I do have an announcement for everybody in Twitch chat. So, courtesy of JuviD and the folks at Counterplay, they did want to celebrate this Duelyst history being made in today's stream by delivering an early holiday gift. So, in lieu of the typical giveaway amounts, we are doing double giveaways and powered up rewards. So, we will have 5 2 orbs, 3 3 orbs, 1 4 orb, and 1 5 orb giveaway.
So 10 winners. 10 winners.
Yep.
Wow.
7 winners in total. That's a lot more than usual. So thank you to GBD for making that possible and offering those extra codes. So if you haven't already entered, go ahead and put !! giveaway into chat and follow that link to enter, because as you can see, it is extra action packed today.
I hear there are some surprises later too, so make sure you stick around for those.
Yes, we do have some surprises later too, so don't zip away as soon as this series ends, because we've got some action for you. But let's get into the action we have right now with game number 3 of the series.
Okay, so getting in right away, we see the Repulsor Beast, and that clues me in that Sibon's A is running a tempo list, or B might be running an anti-Argion list, right? Because it's a really good way to deal with Ironcliffe Guardians.
Yeah, this is I think your analysis was very good, but you neglected to mention the most important part of this matchup, which is the Rogue Legacy Argion skin. Let's all just take a moment of silence to appreciate this running animation. Ooh, Ely Stormblade. Man.
Oh, this is heavy. You see this heavy list?
Crisp. This is a thick list. with five C's. No, I mean, it's Metsilji really was the first guy to start playing Elix Stormblade in Lionar in tournament without Divine Bond. Very interesting list. So yeah, I think Moriar is carrying the torch here. Sibon with Repulsor Beasts advertises or signals rather that he's running a much more tempo oriented list. There it is. There's the Valiant Charge. I mean, I don't know. Okay, let me ask you this, Skarzig. Does it necessarily signal a tempo oriented list, or is it actually a useful control tool in the mirror or against other greedy late game lists to just sort of throw the creature away without using Martyrdom to heal them?
That is an excellent question. Repulsor Beast has developed this reputation as an aggressive card, yet perhaps Sibon has figured out that he can repurpose it as, just such a clean removal. A lot of factions outside of Vanar, right, don't have a way to bring the minion back into the fight. And in the late game, the 2 or 3 turns it might take that minion to actually get back into a useful position is devastating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, Sky Phalanx! This list is thick!
Yeah, this list is ridiculous. And this is what I'm talking about, right? In the Lionar mirror, the greediest list will win because Lionar doesn't have the ability to deal with all of this meat.
Without decimate. Yeah, no, absolutely. Sky Phalanx can destroy you. So for everyone in the chat, it summons 3 5s with Provoke. Really, really good. Moriar, can, I think, proceed kind of comfortably here. He knows what he has to do. He has to just survive to play all this madness. And look at this Ironcliff.
Just walk away from the deal toss. The Ironcliff is going to trade into it. Check this out. The Ironcliff will trade into this deal toss, and it's left as a 3/5. And that's still more than what Lionar can typically deal with outside of fancy combos. But the Repulsor Beast hitting the Ironcliff.
This is so cool. This is such a cool case study because we have 2 very different types of deck in the mirror. You have this tempo-oriented list. Sibon's going in. He knows what Moriar's up to. He's like, nope. He's like, I'll play in the Holy Immolation. I don't care.
He's crunching the numbers right now because
he's like, do I play into it?
Is Holy Immolation really going to blow me out here?
And if Rmoriar is playing this greedy list, what are the chances that he even has the 2-drop immo combo, right?
Right. Because a greedy list like this might even go playing slow.
Right.
Oh, he's definitely, again, taking that brash style that Rmoriar is normally known for and turning it now on its head. People are still favoring Rmoriar to win this game overall, however. 57-40, 43.
I mean, he's got to be careful here. We can't get too excited about the memes because he's only able to deal with a few creatures at a time, right? Felix Stormblade with this huge...
and this is going to let the Ironcliff
zoom in back.
Oh, God, this is devastating.
We flying our now, boys.
The Alex Stormblade, giving that extra space of movement is nothing to sneeze at. The Ironcliff already is back in the game after being sent away with a Repulsor Beast. Your general can also move 3 spaces, so you can close the gap to hit whatever you want or create so much more space to run away from your opponent. Having that extra space of movement gives you so many more options to drop immolation plays in ridiculous valuable spots.
This is, this is so gorgeous seeing this from Rmoriar. I mean, they're not even playing the same game right now. You know what I mean? Sibon is down on cards. He needs to win off of this Ironcliff, right? With the Divine Bond. He needs to make a play like that happen. Moriar can just he will happily martyr that card. Give you all the health back because he is going to win and he's going to win big in the late game with cards like Sky Phalanx. And it's going to be a huge challenge for Sibon to do the damage required before things slip out of control. I mean, you have to give it to him. Moriar is at 12.
He does have him down. So the thing is, if some late game burst can come through, if maybe he thinks, he's not going to leave this Ironcliff up, right? And we see in Sibon's hand, he doesn't have too much right now to work with. Saberspine Tiger would make things look a bit safer here, but it's definitely not looking too good. Moriar, again, needs to... It comes down to draws when you're playing a faster list versus this greed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just so much board for him. You don't need this card anymore.
He needs to draw into Saberspine Tiger and then Roar Immolation. It needs to be that huge combo. And right now with Rmoriar at 17, it's not enough burst. He needs to figure something else out. And now this Ironcliff is getting ready to close the distance next turn.
Sorry, just all the predictions in chat from the draw 3 cards and discard your deck. Very funny, guys.
And now Rmoriar developing an Azurite line of puts another threat on the board, right? Because the Azurite Lion is just so good.
Mm-hmm. You were talking look at you, the prophet here. So you said that, Sibon's is going to need, a bursty play with like a Saber Spine. What is Moriar draw? He draws a Night Watcher.
Oh my God. Exactly. This is what I'm talking about. We saw this yesterday. This was one of the downfalls of Elena versus Pen and JJ, where he needed to get that last win with his Argion list, but it was a faster list that was just, it wasn't bringing enough value to the late game.
This is kind of problematic.
This is going to come down. This is going to come down.
So very okay. So next turn, Moriar is going to have to Circle of Life that Tombstone and hit it with the Lion, or play Sky Phalanx and just sort of body block himself off.
Yeah, because he would get the 3 provokes around him.
He's gonna have to. He has a lot to think about here. How do you play around Holy Immolation? Things of that nature.
Because here's the thing: if he moves the Lion out of the way and plays Sky Phalanx, the other Silverguard Knight gets played into a position where the Spelljammer and Sibon can just kill it, and then that lets the Tombstone get in and be roared. Right. And so that puts Rmoriar super, super low. So and then with the
very precarious here. Yeah, I think that was the right replace, because you need this late game threat, and you might need to kill the Tombstone right here. So those are 2 things that you're just not getting rid of.
Yeah, because he's in this spot now where he can't put 2 provokes in between him and the Tombstone.
Wow, he's gonna. What a madman!
He does have he can. That the Tombstone is going to take 2 more turns to get to him, so he just bought some time there. The Lion is always a threat, right? We don't see anything from Rmoriar like Divine Bond that's going to make this thing absolutely blow out Sibon's.
Right.
But based on what we've seen in the past, it might be enough of a fake out that Sibon feels like he needs to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are the sorts of plays when we're talking about Rmoriar. Just, what? I'm going to Circle of Life the Spelljammer and run my Lion away, and I'm going to bring it back when I can make a more impactful play with it. Really really happy that he drew this Holy Immolation off the top, because he can make a blowout occur with that if Sibon doesn't play around it. Sibon himself,
love this positioning.
Yeah, really good. Just keeping it out there at the fringes. It can threaten to move in at any time, but also to catch Moriar if he tries to escape. Very, very good.
Oh, this is so good right now. Sibon able to close the noose. This will be the first time in recent memory that I've seen the quote-unquote faster list lose to the greedier one. But Sibon is just playing this so well right now. The Spelljammers have put in so much work. Typically, a faster list begins to run out of steam, but he's really playing things on the razor's edge. 3 cards is typically the break point with Lionar that you want to have on you at all times.
Right. And what's tough for Sibon here, or for Moriar here, is that Sibon is putting so much pressure on him with this Tombstone that Moriar just isn't able to set up the Sky Phalanx because it costs so much mana. He can't do anything else. He's gonna have to just go for it here.
Yeah, he just has to play it in 3 different spots. What's nice though is by positioning himself to buy that extra turn, he gets to put the double provoke on the Tombstone. Right. Is what I was talking about before. And so now, 2 Silver Guards theoretically need to be dealt with. And this Lion is still, waiting in the wings, giving him the opportunity to develop other threats.
And now, what we're looking at occurring here is this Lion using its celerity to move up and kill that Tombstone. This Lion is just a tool to eliminate an Iron Cliff dropped in the back or the Tombstone. Very
because he can
interesting play.
He'll be able to hit that. Yeah, he'll be able to use the Circle of Life on the Tombstone, run the Lion up to finish it off, and then he's got the 3/3/5s and now 1/5/5 to fight alongside him here. This formation is really good too, because you can't take out all 3 silver guards in a clean way that you normally like to.
Right. And, you know, a Sunbloom would be really, really bad for Moriar here. But, you know, you have to make him have it. You can't play around everything. And
a Repulsor Beast would be so good here.
That would be pretty good, too. I mean, and this Spelljammer is, it needs to die because you are funneling 8 mana cards into the control deck's hand. You can't do that. Not at this point in the game when you're the aggressive deck in the matchup. So Sibon, you know, very astutely making that trade.
So this is interesting too. He's leaving the Tombstone in range of the Tiger.
I mean, what else can he do? You know what I mean? He can't really.
He could have like played the Silver Stone and just had a weak 1/5 that gets cleaned up by the Tiger.
Wow.
And then it leaves the Tombstone alive for another turn.
You know, he can actually save the Tiger here if he wants to use this Wisp to delete the, Wisp Immolation.
Wisp Immolation, and then the Tiger, you know, what does that do for you?
I mean, I think just Ironcliff Immolation, and then, Circle of Life. He's going for the Circle of Life.
I see. So he does want to draw. You think he's running no, not like Ironcliff Heart. That would be ridiculous. He's just going to buff it to a 4.
That would be so crazy. Oh my gosh.
He's just going to buff it up to a 4/1. That's nice too, because it needs to trade into something, and as a 4/1, it'll be able to hit through Arclight Regalia.
Right. Yeah, and look at that body block. Backing off here, confident.
Ooh, I like this too. Double Regalia now lets you play this.
I mean, it's going to be really interesting. Moriar dropping big threats turn after turn, but Sibon, threatening a tremendous amount of damage with the general and able to clear basically everything.
Shout out to Rmoriar for positioning for those last few plays to tangle up Sibon in the corner, get out of that scrape, and now he's starting to actually pull away, and now they're in the late game. Exactly.
Switch positions. Yeah, it was Moriar getting back into the corner. You know, he juked. You know, he juked him out. He broke his ankles, and then now he's going to the other side of the court. Very, very interesting here.
Yeah, and now the Ironcliff Holy Immolation play.
Wow,
Ooh.
This Solarius is so big because Sibon has 1 card in hand. Moriar drawing 3 a turn and then just making the best possible play. I mean,
I think he could actually just Ironcliff Holy Immolation here, because the Ironcliff will just keep Sibon tied up for at least a turn, kills the Azurite Lion, and then takes a charge off of the Arclight Regalias. And then, while he's tied up for that extra turn, Rmoriar can just create even more distance before he slaps down the Solarius to refill.
I mean,
because right now he's looking for Zeers. If he just drops the Zeer, then that's it.
So this was his one option was Ironcliff Immolation. The other was the Martyr and then play Solarius. He's going with the Solarius because he figures, all right, I'll probably draw another answer to something.
Right, and I mean, he has that play available to him whenever, right? So he can just kill these Arclight Regalias. Once he breaks 1 or 2 of them, then that's going to be...
Not to interrupt you, but Sibon replaced into a useless Divine Bond and just ran away. And he's running away from an opponent who's drawing 1 million cards a turn.
Right now, Sibon is saying, okay, I need to rely on an out-of-hand combo of some nature, or maybe play the Windblade Adept. We're seeing a little bit we saw earlier from Stewie, right, where you just back off and then just start trying to develop as many threats as you can. But the Ironcliff Guardian is going to give Rmoriar the reach he needs to keep the pressure on.
Look at that, flipping the switch, and there's no rush play.
Look at that. Look at him refill his hand. Mamma mia.
There's no way out here. You cannot make a rush play. You need an immolation or something. I mean, Sibon is just...
Ugh. And he replaced the Divine Bond. There was a chance that what he could have done here is just slap down that Ironcliff Guard back behind Rmoriar, and then he would maybe couldn't deal with it. but he's just got to...
I mean, this is just so, I've mentioned this a few times in previous casts. Being at 25 health doesn't matter if your opponent just dominates you on the board. You'll just die in 2 turns from 25. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when a Lionar player is drawing 3 cards a turn and they have 9 mana to do what they will, or to do it as they will, it's not looking good.
Oh God! And then there's Grandmasters here. I honestly, I respect Sibon right now because he went into this matchup with, again, the less greedy list, and he got super close and before Rmoriar was able to juke him out with the Sky Phalanx and using the Circle of Life on that Spelljammer and just walking away. He's been like buying an extra turn here and there because in order to do the damage that he wants to do, Sibon needs to be in the face.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a foregone conclusion at this point, I feel. Not to take the energy out of the cast, but, I mean, what's Sibon realistically going to do here?
Yeah, at this point, you just have to think about what led to this board state. Again, because again, Sibon came so close. I was very proud of his play to have Rmoriar backed up against the wall at that point.
There was a few turns where he might have won. Oh, he played it out of Zeal range. He's so...
And then, look at this, hilarious. This is the late game draw engine that he be, where your opponent just can't deal with it and you're getting infinite value. Will we see fatigue? Because, I mean, Sibon is still at full HP, and the double Regalia is actually pretty tricky here because he's just slaughtering anything that dares oppose him.
Yeah, I mean, he can make the punch with the Shadow Watcher for free every turn, or the Night Watcher.
Mm-hmm. That's true, the force field lets him break
and man, he can just do whatever he wants here. Wow. Tempest, that's going to knock the damage protection off of it. So one thing is just like Tempest and Zir. The other is to just play as many minions as possible.
Yeah, because you could just go for the full surround here. Sibon's actually been like holding onto that Divine Bond and hoping a really big target. The problem here is that when you're overwhelmed like this, anything you play can't really stick. It would need to be... He would need to have like 2 really decent bodied provokes drop in the same turn.
So we are going to see the Tempest, and that's either going to go into double Silverguard or an Iron Cloak. Oh. Hashing in the Solarius says these are all the cards. These are all the cards I need.
And yeah, because once he broke through the double Regalia, then it's just pretty much ringing the dinner bell. He's able to just close in. Sibon replacing the Divine Bond, recognizing he's not going to be able to get anything to stick at this point. He needs to play other bodies on the board that help soften up these threats that are coming down from Rmoriar. Night Watcher is so hard to deal with too when you're pinned down like this.
Yeah, you need multiple instances of damage, and
so the Silver Guard, exactly. The Silver Guard takes out 1 Silver Guard. Right now, Sibon being forced to use his HP as a resource here to hang on. If he ever gets the chance to take out this other Silver Guard Knight, he could ping the Night Watcher with the Blood Tier and then go from there. But I mean, with the Zir in play, it's going to be oh god, Lightbender.
It's not. I mean, I freaked out there because it's just this spell is theoretically what you want, but Zir's still a 5/12. Like you're still gonna
exactly. You want the Lightbender to drop on the turn right before you finish off the general.
You're still gonna get beat to death.
Oh man, the heroic charge running away.
That is so late.
Okay, so this isn't terrible. I mean, he's making the best out of a bad situation. Like these clean plays. Sibon. He's doing what Rmoriar did to him. He's like pivoting around and buying time.
He's refusing to give him the win. And I like that because as Sibon, if you've already accepted that you're basically going to lose, your emotional investment in the game is much less than your opponent's. Who's like, Rmoriar's probably, he's like, how do I close this out? How do I make sure that he doesn't come back? So,
He's putting a lot of mental strain on him.
You can deplete your opponent's emotional and intellectual resources by slow rolling them like this.
Yeah, because then when they finally close, they're going to be resentful. How dare you make me jump through some extra hoops to finish you off? I think we saw this a couple weeks ago, where Rmoriar1 was playing very, very solidly all day, and then suddenly, just hit this wall and started to make a couple really questionable plays. So Sibon, being such an experienced tournament player, might recognize that weakness in him.
Mm-hmm. There's the conceit. Refuses to allow his opponent to land the killing blow.
After all that, I love that. Oh my god! So he definitely said, you know what? I'm going to bring the ultimate salt out of you.
I'm gonna make you play till 12 cards left in the deck, and I'm gonna concede.
Oh man! So
held out for so long just to be like, we do end on my terms, though. I do want you to know that, whether it's a victory for me or not. But two very different decks coming from Argion there. The slower, greedier deck that we've seen, and then coming back with the tempo Argion. Skarzik, what exactly was it about this faster deck that Sibon brought to the table that wasn't able to keep up with this grittier deck from Rmoriar1, particularly when they basically did that position swap around the mid game?
Mm-hmm. The weakness that we saw demonstrated there is actually one of the weaknesses that Vitruvian, right, that Panda JJ was trying to exploit with his Saj lists, is that Lionar can't deal with these large bodies very well. What would have let Sibon close out that game, truth be told, was to get a second Repulsor Beast in there somewhere. He might just be running it as a one-of in that list.
That's true. There could just be one in there. And one thing, too, that Rmoriar1 did in this game, and we've seen him do it with other generals in other games as well, using that distance to buy him some time, where he has clearly worked in a late game deck. How did he effectively do that here, Winter, when he was pretty pinned down with some extremely large threats on him?
How did Sibon take it?
Or how did Rmoriar1 manage to use it
to withstand that pressure? Yeah, I mean, he positioned very carefully, showcasing this sort of patient, play style that we all describe him as having. Mm-hmm. Really, made unconventional plays. Didn't commit to killing the Tombstone too early with the Circle of Life. Instead, chose to kill the Spelljammer, and just run the Lion away, and just sort of, they're just playing like footsie with these two big threats, off on the periphery, while they tried to outmaneuver each other. And, because of the way Sibon responded, he just had that turn where he could drop the Sky Phalanx and then sort of remaneuver. And then the battle went back as Sibon ran away to the corner, which I, didn't necessarily agree with, because he really needed to leverage those Regalias. But in any case, leading up to that point in the game, Rmoriar1's heal and careful play, I think with good replaces, keeping his hand full of different options, allowed him to get there. Sibon just didn't have the burst. If he were maybe playing an aggressive Magmar list, he might have had a better chance.
Yep. The Solari is coming through to give him that draw. And then we saw, it was this clear card advantage. And we know what happens when a tempo Argion has to top deck. At one point I believe it was 9 mana, Sibon had a Holy Immolation in hand that he replaced into a Divine Bond with nothing on the board, couldn't make any play, and simply had to run away. And that does not feel good when you don't do it by choice, like Stewie did earlier when he skipped on 5 mana with cards to play, but are forced to do just that.
Exactly. And then he replaced that Divine Bond into an Ironcliff Guardian. So his deck was just one step behind him.
Yep, exactly. But one thing here, though, Sibon has to win with Argion. It's the only thing he has left. If he were to win that game, he would have 3-0'd his opponents. But now Rmoriar1 is probably thinking, I know what kind of deck you're going for. I just have to get a victory against it. And we are going to see in game number 4, Rmoriar1 bringing the Cassiva on side number 1 and Sibon on side number 2 with, of course, Argion. Don't forget to enter the giveaway we have in store because thanks to GVD, we are doing double giveaways today with lots and lots of free spirit orbs. But let's go. Game number 4 of our semifinal series.
And, oh man, Sibon is going to be hitting a bit of a wall here, right? Being forced to find a win with this list that isn't like the ultra late game list.
Right.
He came very, very close, right? He played this list very well, better than I've seen anybody else so far, right? Come that close to taking down a greedy list. But, and I think...
We are actually, going to step away for just a moment, just kidding.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. It'll give me a bit more time to talk about the interplay of this Argion then. The thing is now he's forced to find another win, and he came very, very close. But Cassiva doesn't have those really large bodies to fall back on the way Argion does to stop things up. We know that Rmoriar1 isn't going to be running things like Klaxon, right? Those are for the ultra greedy Cassiva lists. So if Sibon can get that early pressure the way that he established last game, he might be able to close this out, truth be told.
Absolutely.
I think that while a slower Lionar list will win over a faster one, a faster list has better matchups in other factions. And so,
all right.
Okay, so we are getting back into the game. Perfect. So, Ooze opening up here, turn 1. Sibon might be forced to take the defensive route, stepping up and playing the Silver Guard to threaten one of the top mana.
Yeah, diagonally. I mean, oh wow, he's very, very interesting to see somebody play a slow when they do have the immolation in hand, because that is a combo you want to hold on to. I think looking for this 3/5 on board in the middle with the ability to replenish your hands to support that tempo strategy is exactly, he's trying to do exactly what you're talking about, Skarsnik. He wants to just apply that early pressure, fill his hand, and just shut this Cassiva deck down from the beginning. He does not want this to go late.
Yeah, because late game, Cassiva can't throw big things in your way, but she has that out-of-hand burst with Revenant, possibly Obliterate, that's just going to blow out the game. If Sibon can put himself in like a really key spot by 6 or 7 mana, then I think that he'll have a much easier time closing it out. We see the Lightbender in his hand already. He needs to hold on to that for dear life.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you want to hit something like Reaper of the Nine Moons, or like a Duelyst or an Abyssal Juggernaut. Take out some tiles. Very useful. See some Dancing Blades.
Right. Rmoriar1 was running the Dancing Blades before. It can get you such good value, especially against Lionar. If you take out a Windblade Adept or an Azurite Lion, it's not as ubiquitous as it used to be. So people don't play around it as often as they should.
He's again just dropping this slow to pin his opponent down, really valuing spamming as many stats as possible over preserving for these blowout plays. He just wants to board pressure. Grasp of Agony is so good here.
Oh man, so the Grasp of Agony will allow him to kill that slow that's on the tile, drops the Silver Guard down to a 3/2 and kill it with his general. Then he gets to ping the other slow, right? And then, oh man, so this is going to be a huge swing. One of those blowouts, again, that people don't really play around too much, even though Grasp of Agony has been slowly working its way back into the meta.
Let's see here. So, sorry, chat freaked out. Apparently, there's a partial spoiler of Meltdown.
No way.
Yeah, deal 7 mana, deal 7 damage.
I didn't see anything. I don't know. I mean, that's just chat memeing. You can't really pay attention to what they say.
Who knows what it deals 7 damage to, or what faction it's in. I guess we'll find out.
All right. So again, cleaning up with the Grasp of Agony is huge. There allows Rmoriar1 to clean up and just nullify that early pressure, get that out of the way. And now Sibon is really scrambling because having those 3 provokes was what was going to allow him to snowball into the later parts of the game.
Man. Grasp of Agony. What a card. And that is so important because, Sibon's strategy of just front-loading on board here at the expense of options in hand, right? Because he's going down, has just really been exploited in the most pure way possible with a play like Grasp of Agony because Rmoriar can... Oh, God, this Dancing Blaze is so huge here. Just goodbye to your board. I'm going to take the initiative. I have a full hand.
Disaster, yeah, because Sibon had, the dream opening. Because he was able to deal with the ooze in a pretty decent way, got the card draw of the Spelljammer, had our Armory locked down, but now, these reactive cards that Cassava relies on to nullify the board and keep things going are just paying dividends right now.
And he really needs this Iron Cliff to do something.
He needs it to stick around.
It's just over.
If he has the demonic lore, if he has the third perfect answer for the board state, then that's just going to be GG. That's what Lionar hates, is when you have the perfect answer into the perfect answer into the perfect answer.
I mean, I think everyone hates that, right?
I think for Lionar, it really devastates them even more, right? Because they love to play big things on.
Yeah, no, just what deck is really excited when their opponent has the perfect answer turn after turn.
All right, but fortunately, he doesn't have the demonic lore. He just he only dispels the Iron Cliff. So Sibon, we're to get his hands on a Divine Bond here. Oh man, that would be so good.
Yeah, I'm sure that he's scared of it. This is a big Juggernaut.
Ooh,
this is a big board.
Look at this. He plays the Juggernaut behind Sibon to keep him bottled up in this corner next to the Dancing Blades, rather than using it to double body block for the Ironcliff Guardian.
Nope, he is.
So he's going to soften it up a little bit. So Divine Bond won't hurt as badly.
Yeah. I think he was scared of Divine Bond Immolation being... No, it's still lethal. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think you got to replace here, because if you get the Divine Bond... Okay, so Repulsor...
That's really good. That's really good. I don't know why you don't go face there. You have the Revenant. You have all this other stuff.
Yeah, so you just throw the Juggernaut, right? You throw that away.
Yeah. Man, I'm still... Moriarty, why didn't you go face with that? Anyway, he chose not to.
Again, softening up the Iron... The Holy Immolation Divine Bond is still lethal because the Iron Cliff still gets to heal itself partially before
he's just playing around the Divine Bond.
And this might be a symptom of that slow roll that Sibon had put him through the last game.
I almost feel like it was because had he double body blocked with the Juggernaut, Sunbloom would have been better, but he would have been able to go face without being terrified of Divine Bond. This way,
what I would have liked to see maybe is on the Iron Cliff rather than just being played onto the Repulsor Beast, right? Because the Iron Cliff he would still be able to step through, kill the Ephemeral Shroud, and then the Iron Cliff gets the Holy Immolation puts on it, gets the heal before it hits. So a little bit of missed damage there from Sibon. But I mean, putting Cassava so low, we'll see if that actually becomes a factor. He's still got the 3/4. Ironcliff Guardian that he can just hit with Roar. We'll see how that ends up playing out in the long run.
This is a scary turn because if he goes to 6, punching the 2/2 and using Revenant on the 3/4, he's gonna be in the red for anything plus Holy Immolation. He's gonna die to Tiger plus Roar. He is dead to so many things. Oh wow. I mean, now it almost looks like he has to play Dark Transformation and Spectral Blade. That's gonna hurt really bad when this Seer comes down. He could say, he could say, you know what? I'm probably dead to Immolation or Rush Cat here, but this is the only play that lets me win. I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, he can Spectral Blade and hit the Iron Cliff, and then Sphere of Darkness Abyssal to take out the Repulsor Beast. And he does have mana left over for the Healing Mist.
There you go.
So this is nice, and look at that. He does have the, which we've seen in some Cassava lists. It's not as effective versus Lionar, of course, but every once in a while, it can soften something up for you, or just kill something outright.
Man, this Grandmaster Z is just going to get hit with the Dark Transformation.
He's thinking about it now that he's got the deal toss. He's like, oh man, do I just drop this now?
Do I commit?
Because he hasn't seen any demonic lures yet either.
Yeah, he could whip it over
he can whip it and
play
then
with the Juggernaut.
Yeah.
You know what? He's going for it though.
Oh, he's going to force him to have the answer.
Yep. You know what? You're playing on 2 cards. You have to just go for it. If you're going to come back, just go for it. Because any turn, he could just replace something, into the answer. Wow.
Right, because like Revenant here is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's lethal. The Mystic steps around, and then he hits him with the Spectral Blade in the face. So playing the Zir there is actually correct. He recognized that he was actually in the red. So now the Zir needs to be dealt with instead. And again, I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. When your opponent deals with Zir, it's almost like you heal for 12.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, right? So either way, you're not dying. Unless you do. You're dead. But, I mean, yeah, I think Sibon made the correct play, both from the playing to not lose and playing to win perspectives. And the Juggernaut is slowly rejoining the part.
Lightbender is pretty decent here. Take out a few of those Shadow Creep tiles and lock down that Juggernaut with the Iron Cliff, perhaps.
You're concerned of being in range of anything, though, because you're so close to being dead to Revenant. You only have 5 health to spare here.
So he has to create some distance away from the Juggernaut still. Where do you drop the Iron Cliff? Top corner. I dig it. Body blocks away from the Mystic, so the Mystic can't help soften it up. The Abyssal Juggernaut's not going to be in the right spot to kill it either.
I like this. Keep this Iron Cliff where the only thing that can hit it is the General. But man, this Demonic Lore.
Oh,
Revenant. That's the worst.
God!
He
did have the Demonic Lore. Damn, but I mean that was the first one we've seen, and that's the bane of Lionar's existence.
I mean, he was gonna draw that whip at some point, right?
But man, I mean, our Rmoriar1 just. That's what Kasuba does to you. She had the Grasp of Agony, and then she had the Dark Transformation for the Zir, and then finally the Demonic Lore coming through to finish the game off.
I mean, Sibon's deck just can't close these games out quickly enough and doesn't have the late game potential to actually go.
Right, and this is the falter that we saw a little bit from Elaine trying to do both, and then it ends up just drowning in this muddy area in the center.
Yeah, we've seen 2 games in a row now with that Archeon deck where Sibon, he got real close and it was looking fairly good for him, but then wasn't able to close it out in time. One thing too, earlier y'all were talking about how there was this reactiveness that was coming out of Moriarty that worked so much in his favor. And we saw yesterday, I can't recall exactly what match, but where some of the decks were too reactive, particularly a Magmar deck. But how do things like Dancing Blade Skarzig pose such a threat here where it has that reactivity to possibly remove a minion but still puts a 4/6 onto the board?
When you are getting pressured by a Windblade Adept or something and you're just able to clear that out, that's like one of the best targets for it. Right, you take out the 4/3 with the Dancing Blades, and then you have this huge body on the board. And so not only did you just swing the tempo back in your favor, it gets even more value because your opponent has to deal with this body. At 6 HP, Dancing Blades is out of range of a lot of burst because normally, things like Cryogenesis, things like Holy Immolation, you still need to find 2 more damage. So you might have to trade in another 2/3 or hit it with your General.
Yeah, there's not really many things that can come through and in one sweep be able to remove it, particularly in the deck of Archeon here. But now we are pushing to a game number 5, which both of you did believe this was going to go to game 5, but both of you also predicted for Sibon. And now we are left with that final matchup where Sibon has to win on Archeon and our Rmoriar1 has to win on Fae. Winter, he's been having a hard time closing it out here, considering he's going against Faye. What are some things I can consider, knowing what type of deck he's running, to try and close this out for a victory?
He's going to have to be really fast. He hasn't been fast enough. And I think one saving grace for this matchup is, Faye does have a lot of single target removal, but a really aggressive list can sort of sidestep the punish for that because they're not committing as heavily as a greedier later game deck is. Also, if it's like a wall approach, Lionheart do have that AoE that's really useful.
Yeah, maybe we'll actually see that play out here in game number 5 of our semifinal series. Remember, in addition to the hashtags in Twitch chat with your predictions, hashtag RMO winner, hashtag SIB win, we would also love to hear what you have to say on Twitter by tweeting at PlayDuelyst with the hashtag DWC for the chance to see your tweets on the stream throughout this broadcast. But in traditional qualifier fashion, it does come down to game number 5 between these two players. Sibon on the starting side with RGN, Rmoriar1 on side number 2 with Faye. Let's get to it.
All right, so hopping in. Yeah, I know. Look at these hands. Like, you see the most extreme on both ends pretty much, right? Like, all the early game stuff in Sibon's hands, and then, like, these heavy late game drops in Rmoriar1's hands. When we saw the line our mirror earlier, who had the Tempest? Is Sibon running Tempest in this list?
I don't think we saw Tempest.
Maybe it was pulled off of a Keen or something. But anyway, that's going to be one of the main things that I hope Sibon has in this list to deal with Jack's True Sight.
Yeah, I mean, not only Jack's True Sight, but also Gravity Wells and things of that nature. Turn 1, CC.
That's really
Whoa.
That he's taken the really slow route there. What the Chromatic Cold just takes that off being a 4/3. He still gets to ramp up. Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of, nothing big for him to actually ramp into besides Arclight Regalia. But then that just puts him in a nice dominant state to take the center of the board, and then you have this huge artifact to back you up. Because normally when you play Arclight Regalia, if you can play it while you're ahead on board, it has that much more pressure. Because when your opponent has the options on board to clear it, then it's such a waste.
Yeah, I mean, just taking a step back, like, I've never seen that opener outside of a bronze match. Very, very interesting. Just Chromatic Cold a creature and, like, run diagonally down. Certainly has something in mind here, as he's gonna, sort of
he wants the Windblade Adept to be softened up for some later play, because in any other situation, you'd think holding on to the Chromatic Cold would.
Here's the thing: why do you move diagonally down 1 instead of just straight forward 1? I mean, I guess you figure they're going to take the tile anyways, so you should be closer to the bottom. In which case, it kind of makes sense. In any case, Rmoriar showing again his sort of unconventional approaches. Welcome addition to the board here with these. Wow. Okay.
Okay, so he's going to play the Sunsteel Defender.
Just way in the back.
This is nice because the slow will just
suicide
hit into it.
Go get him, Tiger.
Sunsteel is left in a position where there's nothing else that can threaten it after its loss of its force field. Oh, Tiger spoke too soon. Yep. Do you trade in the Tiger here? Do you think that would be worthy?
Your 7 mana for the Immolation play is a little while away, and you do have the Blood Tier, so on 5 mana you can always just drop the Im if you need to. I think you do, because you don't know. You can always get rid of the shield in the future with the Blood Tier. I think it's just best to clear it off now to preserve the integrity of your Regalia.
Right. Valuing the Regalia.
Right. And then also to make sure that, you only have to respond to 1 minion next turn. You don't have to respond to 2. The Sunsteel plus whatever else.
I think that, taking advantage of that window of opportunity where there was no force Sunsteel, perfect. Just jump right on it. That's definitely, now that you're mentioning it, it's really clean play.
Yeah. Let's see here.
And now Sibon is, foregoing the mana. He can just take these whenever he's going to need that extra ramp. With Rmoriar now in the corner, this is where you don't want to be against Lion-R, because as soon as a Silver Guard or an Iron Cliff drops, things are going to get really dicey. And, oh man, but we've seen this before from Rmoriar, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, we totally have. I mean, this is what I was talking about earlier. This is the thing he does, where he just backs off and then sort of plays this really weird, like, micro positioning game.
Yeah, and Sibon's now
bamboozles his opponent.
Bamboozles, exactly. Sibon is sort of aware of his tricks right now. He doesn't want to get juked out of this corner.
I love it. He's daring. He's almost daring Sibon to play Holy Immolation here. Gosh, and Blood Tier is the best target for it. This is so crisp. This is so crisp.
God, yeah, the Blood Tier takes away the force field. Oh, yeah.
Did you see the unhesitating advance? Like, Sibon just whipped that play out of the pocket. He's like,
you didn't think I had the Blood Tier,
no
did
thoughts.
You? Look at that.
No thoughts.
To take the General for free. I really dig this play because this Regalia, again, he's been managing to preserve it because Rmoriar can't keep a board.
And, you know, he did put himself into the corner here, but he just doesn't care.
They managed to switch sides, and now he's like walking out, like was sort of able to read the formation, right? He's saying, okay, I'm going to set him up for a possible Holy Immolation play, but what this allows me to do is switch sides with them. Because he wanted to step down to hit him in the face with the Arclight Regalia instead of possibly stepping up and away, right? Just to be behind the other Blood Tier to get the Immolation play off. And so that's what allowed Rmoriar to slip past him and play this Bone Reaper now.
And man, double Duelyst is such a response. Oh, nope. He's just going to... Wait, no, he's not. He's at 6 mana, not 8 mana. Sorry,
it's because he had the 2 tiles, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah, right.
Theoretically.
6+2 Yeah,
theoretically, he should be, but I mean, he forewent taking those.
Carry the one. Yeah, what a gentleman. What a gentleman.
So. He didn't take the tiles because he was in such a dominant board state, but now Rmoriar, once again, breaking the ankles, getting past him, now has access to this mana.
Man, oh man. I mean, Sibon is at 25, and Moriari's deck doesn't have a clear win con in hand here.
Yeah, he might even do Hearth Sister to get the deal toss into range for the Warbird, and the Bone Reaper finish it off.
Or from the Bone Tier is going to finish it off exactly. You know, there's almost something to be said for Aspect of the Fox, just to completely deny him anything out of that Duelyst. But he's slow rolling him. He's preserving both of those and just going to play the Sojourner, hopefully to draw into some bodies, given that he does have 2 removal cards in hand.
Right. When you're playing against a faster Argeon list like this, you know that their largest threats. Well, this is we keep calling it like a tempo list, right? A fast list, just because it looks so fast in comparison to typical Lion-R list. But this is like very mid-rangey.
It is because it doesn't have cards like Arclight Sentinel. I think you would find in a more dedicated tempo list would have things like Arclight Sentinel.
And I mean, he's only expecting Ironcliff Guardian as the maximum, like, largest threat. So that's why he's holding on to the Aspect of the Fox. He got a little taste of this last game where he's like, I just need to blow out, your threats 2 or 3 times in a row, and then you're out of options, and then I just take over in the late game.
Man, I love how look at what Sibon's doing here. He's just going all in. He's just saying, you know what? I'm putting my cards on the table, literally and figuratively. What have you got for me?
The only thing that Rmoriar could have at this point is maybe a Frostburn, But
I mean, damn, this is gonna be interesting. The White Asp, with the way this battle is developing, Sibon sort of on the side looking to push back towards the retreating Moriari. How these walls, if he does keep the White Asp, interact with that development is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, because getting past the additional Blazing Spines, there's, it's that extra obstacle that Sibon has to work through. Lion-R, being forced to approach like that, you have to take the long way around the Blazing Spines or trade resources into them to get them cleared out. And all the while, Faye's burning you down with Warbird. All the while, Faye is getting closer and closer to that late game. And even though Faye's late game isn't as strong as other factions, when you're playing against a deck that didn't bring the late game to the table, you just pull ahead of them naturally.
Right. And using the aspect here strategically, acknowledging that this is the time to sort of just start shutting down Sibon's board, refusing to allow him that tombstone, one in the pocket in case of an actually severe threat, which is totally fine because Sibon's down to one card in hand. That's the best he can do.
Yeah, so let me see. The Windblade Adept gets to trade into the... So he doesn't draw a card. Gets rid of the Blazing Spine. You have to recall, when walls are dispelled, they disappear. He can bore the Tombstone, so it can take out the Hearth Sister. He has to leave the Tombstone in place, right? He can only move it up because he'd be playing in a Warbird otherwise. Does he care about it taking another 2 damage on top of it?
I really don't think he does. I mean, you hurt yourself much more by not playing. This Jax isn't gonna, doing a good job with the Tombstone. It's incidentally in a position to respond to a mini Jax in the corner. But otherwise, having no real response.
And honestly, I think if Jack's True Sight were to be dropped, Sibon might just go, I think I can for it. The problem is the White Asp. The next 2 bodies he trades into this thing are going to become 3/3s that are going to turn against him.
Man, look at how mana efficient this is. Utilizing 10 mana here with the BBS, the Sojourner, and the Jack's True Sight. And that Sojourner is so important here because, as Sibon sort of responds to this Jack's True Sight, Rmoriar is going to be accelerating his draw into additional follow-up threats. And boy, oh boy, that aspect of the mountains is critical here because it's going to just be a board clear, or it's going to turn one of these mini Jaxes into a 5/5. Maybe even the Sojourner. Divine Bond just not really mattering at all here, given Sibon's distance from Moriari. That distance is only going to increase as he pulls his forces away to respond to the Jack's True Sight.
Yeah, this is really interesting in terms of a macro perspective, right? Because Rmoriar just been running away this whole time, recognizing that Lion-R is so slow on the approach. They have to get on top of you early and not let go.
Right. This deck it seems like if it doesn't have some miraculous Divine Bond play early, it just doesn't have a way to win. We have consistently seen Sibon's remain relatively healthy up until 9 mana, and then just
gets overwhelmed.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then what? He just doesn't have any draw.
This old win condition of hope something sticks, hit it with Divine Bond, just doesn't work right now in the current meta because people are bringing these answers to get rid of these early threats and just pull it into the late game. Oh man! So again, Sibon's playing this deck well, but struggling to truly pin down Rmoriar the way he wants to.
Just doesn't have the tools. And
some additional provokes, maybe some magnetize would be a nice boon to this list, or maybe even just go full tempo.
Yeah. Commit to it. I think it's interesting because Moriar is at 14. Faye doesn't have any healing. If he can somehow get over there and just annihilate Moriar with if he replaces into Tiger here, Tiger Immolation is very big.
Gets the Spelljammer, so he can at least do something with that.
Man, Tiger War Immolation would have been huge. It would have been 9 damage. It would have cleared all of the Jaxes but 1.
And the other key here is he can't develop the Spelljammer.
What's that?
The Spelljammer will get one shot by White Asp. So playing it here, it's rough because he gets to one shot that. Then the mini Jaxes get to take off the Regalia, and the Tombstone and the Windblade Adept aren't in range to help out for another couple turns.
Right.
I think that this is a decent bait, truth be told, because he's saying, okay, do you want to take this 5 damage, or are you going to use another removal on this Spelljammer?
He could even run that Jax over and just aspect to the mountains, turn it into a 5/5, blow out
Oh, that's right. The Aspect
Jammer.
of Mountains does 5 damage in an AoE.
He could do it off of a gravity well. I mean,
Mercy.
There are just so many options here to do disgusting things. And the L key, and at the end of the day, to replenish the hand. Boy.
And Vanar has a lot of good cards, right? A lot of situational cards that are so strong, but they're so situational you don't run them in your deck because the chances that the opportunity to use them will come up are just so low.
And it is.
Yeah, with Lucian able to give you those options, though, it's really strong for Vanar as a faction. Oh, God, what a blowout. That's rough.
Just like that. The switch has been flipped.
And he gets to go face. Yeah, after the Regalia is down.
And now he's looking to go for the throat and behead the opposition. Sibon's is going to need a miracle. I mean...
He does have the other Light Bender. What does that do for him? He can get rid of some of these walls, but... Immolation...
He's going to need to make an immolation play.
Yeah, that takes away the charge of the White Asp, kills the Seismic Elemental, and then he can clear 3 of the gravity walls with his general and his 2 minions here.
Wow. I mean, and what do you play? Do you play the Jammer because you really, really want to draw something more? Or do you provoke the general just to make sure that you're saving yourself from taking 2 damage next turn because you are at 10?
I think he wants to preserve, not only protect his general with the provoke, but he wants to, again, try to keep his opponent locked down. This is like only the second time in the game that Rmoriar has actually been provoked, right? He's been creating so much distance here, and he's been slowly burning Sibon's down as he was forced to back off to the other side of the map to clear those mini jaxes before he could continue his advance.
I mean, we got to give it to Sibon. Moriar is at 8. He is in the red.
He is, like I said, he's come so close several times with this list, and then, his opponent just pulls ahead of him. So Rmoriar is really relying on that. Double burr from the Lakean. Ouch.
So bad.
Right now with this Silverguard Knight on board, he was really hoping, right, for something that could just deal with this cleanly. He's going to have to maybe Hearth Sister, Chromatic Cold, do some shenanigans there.
So you shoot with the bottom mini jacks. You Hearth Sister the Silverguard out of the way. And then you Chromatic Cold BBS aspect to the
He could aspect of the Fox on the last gravity well.
Yep. So it's 5.
He'd be going all in, right? 7. Because he's saying, okay, I don't think I because I'm dead to out of hand burst regardless.
That's just lethal, dude. That's lethal.
Let me see. That's 3 damage from the gravity well.
Never mind.
2. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And then the Chromatic Cold. Or did he not have mana for it?
Does he have... Wait a minute. So he'll drop him down to like 2.
And then have the Chromatic Cold.
No, I don't think he had the mana for it.
2 + 2 + 1. Oh, he was 1 off.
Okay, so he didn't have the mana for it. So he couldn't, and he did value keeping the aspect of the Fox in his hand as well.
Mm-hmm.
Relying on this Lakean's 2/4 body, which is a pretty respectable stat line to keep him in this. And now with the Warbirds online and these mini jacks is still a threat. Sibon has to think, God, do I play the Spelljammer here and try to fish for answers? No, he's got to play the Ironcliffe here to so he's just going to get these bodies on board. He's not going to try to replace into something really crazy like a Holy Immolation. And there it is. And Rmoriar being rewarded here again for holding on to the aspect of the Fox. He's had it for like 4 or 5 turns now.
Yeah. No, I mean, but at this point, Sibon just...
Oh, yep, and then the Chromatic Cold. Oh, man.
He just couldn't close it in.
He came so close every time, and then just his opponent pulled ahead of him. Lion-R has trouble reclosing that gap once you get away from them once, maybe even twice. But
Man, oh man. Yeah, Sibon started that series games, and then Moriarty came on that Argeon deck. But he did, as you said, got really, really close every single time. And one thing, Winter, it seems that Rmoriar1 seemed to be kind of elusive, huh? Always moving from one side to the other, just attacking Sibon.
Very spectacular movement.
Breaking ankles. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And that was a reverse sweep, too, so there should be some hype for that.
Oh yeah.
That's not easy to do. So then, Skarzig, does that really have something to say about Moriarty? We saw early on where, okay, maybe there was a really obvious spectral play or something, spectral revenant, but instead he took a moment and saw a bit more of an intricate play that was optimal. And then here, having to stick his nose to the grindstone and stay level-headed throughout those last 3 games to get the victory. Fairly new player to the tournament scene. Is that something that usually takes a bit for someone to develop, that consistency?
Well, Rmoriar1 right now, background, so he's able to balance like figures and probability, and playing for overall long game value. That's what poker's about. You get value over a long period of time. You're playing hundreds of thousands of hands.
Right.
And so with Duelyst, we see this repeated in his plays where he might take something that at a first glance looks suboptimal, but it actually generates like enormous value over the next 2 or 3 turns because the implications of the play that he made forces his opponent into an awkward spot, or his opponent, while they might be able to develop something dangerous, might be forced into a really awkward mana total because of, the possible removals they need to play.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of these games have been extremely dragged out. And there's certain cards too, like we saw the Bone Reaper, which we've talked about before, but wasn't just in Moriarty's deck, but also made appearance in Human's deck and a couple other people. So these cards that are meant to drag out and really control the positioning of the enemy general. Winter, is this a trend that we're seeing across the board?
Yeah, I think Moriarty just really, really loves to do those, positional puzzles, in games with his opponent and bait them around. When he sees the openings, he jumps for it. He flips the switch when he needs to. And it's a pleasure to watch. And this isn't to say that Sibon isn't an excellent player who's also capable of doing that. It's just that Argeon deck just didn't have the tools to win the game.
He came so close so many times. Yeah. And then Moriarty pivot out of these crazy situations and get away from him. And I think that a lesser player would have collapsed under that pressure.
Yeah, and it's really tough to say because that was a really superb matchup between Moriarty and Sibon. Moriarty, we've said time and time again, DPL champion, really going for the gold tier. And then Sibon, who we usually actually see make it to the finals, but had a really tough matchup here in the semifinals. Do you think that's going to be pretty draining on him? I mean, we ask this question each time, but Windsor, what does Sibon have to do to get a victory here?
Maybe take a break. I don't know. Go back to the drawing board.
He could recenter on the meta for sure. Because honestly, his only stumbling block here was not bringing the ultra greedy Argeon list, in my opinion. Because if he just brought something that was like really heavy, I think he could have just lasted in the late game. Because if he had Sundrop Elixirs, Circle of Life, he would have just been able to heal so much beyond what Rmoriar1's Fae could have put out in that last match, or maybe even put things through against Cassava. You know what I mean? And I think that that's really what the stumbling block was, is having that one like suboptimal list. And I say suboptimal in the sense that it doesn't fit in the current tournament meta right now. It's still a very good list. You can run it on ladder right now. Right, but in this tournament, exactly, in this tournament environment, it's just being farmed up.
Yep, I mean, that's a very valid point to make there, that Sibon was playing with what is considered the strongest general in the game right now with Argeon, but because his deck was not matching what makes that general strong at the moment, he wasn't able to pull it through. But we have to give props to Moriarty here for bringing that reverse sweep to the table, something that is not easy to do, putting himself into the finals of this November qualifier. When we get back, we will have our secondary semifinal series between Panda JJ and the Toy Master. But one quick note. Now, yesterday, anyone who tuned into that broadcast saw a little extra something. We had some technical difficulties that looked a little something like this.
Hold me, Jack. Hold me.
Now, I know everyone is extremely curious as to what exactly was going on. So make sure that you stick around, because when we return from the break, we will be clarifying the spoilers that everyone has been waiting so long for. So sit back, relax, grab a drink or a snack if you would like. And when we return, we have all the answers to all of your questions.